Welcome to Eight Sided Freaks. Today we have a pay-per-view recap. Today we're going over UFC 308. We're going in depth on all the fights on the main card, and then we'll hit some final thoughts on some of these prelims. These main card fights may take a second because we've had some massive fights. UFC featherweight title fight. We had at least, I think, one number one contender for sure, and then another fight that was potentially a number one contender, depending on your opinion on the division. So we'll break into those fights, and even the first two fights in the card were some good ones as well. So all around important fights, and we saw quite a few good fights as well. So that is the plan for today, and we will start it off right at the top of the bill with the most important fight on the card: Max Holloway versus Ilia Topuria. We saw Ilia Topuria defend his featherweight title for the first time, and he did it by knocking out Max Holloway, which I think that is as impressive of a first title defense as you can have as a champion for a division. Jerry, we can swing it over to you first. What were your thoughts on Ilia's performance?
I mean, you knock out Volkanovski to win the title. Then your first defense is Max Holloway, and you finish Max Holloway for the first time in that sort of style in his career. Great performance by Ilia. Cannot take anything away from him. He is a very, very dangerous fighter, and I'm very excited to see what's next and what comes of his future. But just as far as the performance goes, he was superb. He knew what he had to do. He kept away, and I will say I scored it 1-1 going into round three, just because I think Max did a little more damage, had a little more striking in that second round. But the way Ilia came out and just landed shot after shot, and it was powerful shots, looked like nothing Max had ever seen before.
Yeah, I had it 1-1 as well, and I was trying to think. I don't even know what specific rounds. It just felt like the fight should have been 1-1 going in a little bit. It was, if anything, it was just pretty competitive, pretty fun through the first two, and I thought Max was doing everything he needed to do. Um, with his strikes, the certain things we were talking about the tools he brings to the specific fights and stuff, and I thought he was executing the game plan pretty well, but I guess there's just a power difference, and as in Topuria just maybe might have godlike power that we've never seen for some reason at that division, because even when you think the fight is going well, or Max is at least, looking better than past people Ilias fought. There it is, right there, another insane KO. And like you said, it was kind of shocking a little bit. Although I feel like we all knew it was definitely a great possibility. But thinking it could happen versus actually watching it happen, it was a bit interesting to see Max, kind of flatlined finally, after all the amazing fights and wars he's been in. So
Yeah, I had it 1-1 as well. I had Holloway round one, Topuria round two. And just kind of the vibe of the third round. I don't remember off the top of my head how deep they were in the third round when the fight ended, but I kind of thought Holloway was winning the third until he wasn't. Um, Ultimately, that round doesn't really matter when you're talking about scoring rounds. You saw, I don't know, half of it, but so yeah, I thought it was a pretty even fight up until then, and I think one of the reasons I was so impressed, personally, I was very impressed with Ilia's performance. I thought it was sensational. But specifically, one of the reasons I was impressed is because we talk about Max Holloway a lot. We've talked about him several times on this podcast, and we've talked about how, fighters have things that they can go out there and do um, to win a fight. Max Holloway is a guy that we've given a lot of credit to for pre-fight coming up with a great game plan and using whatever tools he needs to win a fight. And I thought he was doing that again in this one. And I think that's what's impressive. He went out there and he was landing his lead hook a lot. That's a good way to occupy Topuria's right hand. He went out there, he was landing a good amount of kicks as well. Specifically, he was throwing that lead leg kick. You don't really see Holloway throw a lot of lead kicks with the front leg. He landed some oblique kicks, which once again isn't something you see Holloway throw a lot of. But with all that being said, you can list off all these things that Holloway was doing great. He was doing a great job of getting off the fence because that's ultimately where he got in trouble. But for the first two rounds, he wasn't getting corralled up against the fence. He was getting exits, and Ilia made some nice adjustments in there as well. Started landing his right hook a little bit more in the second round. Landed that left hook when Max was starting to circle off. He was landing that left hook. So I thought Ilia did a great job of seeing what Holloway was doing and making his own adjustments in there. So to me, that's very impressive when I look at the things Max Holloway was doing, and I was, we're in round 1 and round 2, and I'm going, this is a great game plan. I love what he's doing. And then ultimately, Ilia is still the one to get the knockout in round 3. To me, that's like as impressive as it gets for, a striking based fight. And he landed the takedown as well. So, and last thing I'll mention here before I swing it back to you guys, landed a lot of leg kicks. We saw Volkanovski land a lot of leg kicks and against Holloway in their 3 fights. Topuria kind of continued that trend. And it would have been interesting to see what that looked like if, he would have had 2.5 more rounds of landing the types of leg kicks he was landing.
I want to just bounce off what you're saying about the leg kicks quickly. I remember I don't know who said it on the broadcast, but it was like, yeah, Max Holloway is known for his elite foot skill as well. His footwork is superb, and that's what makes him such a good boxer and a good stand-up guy. And he's like, yeah, Ilia is just chopping at him. It's exactly what you said, to the point of Volkanovski. That's what he did against him. And when your front leg is getting ripped apart, it's hard to put pressure and actually get power behind your punches. So that was a great move by Ilia. That and the body shots that he did more in the second and third round.
That's funny because there's 2 things with MMA strike or just MMA in general. One is it's always good seeing someone, because for some reason people in MMA don't do it. I don't want to call fighters just dumb or lack of game planning, but like it's good to see someone use what has worked against, like we said, Volk against Holloway, use those leg kicks. They worked against him, and so Ilia was able to put those in his game plan. Like one of the other ones is Nate Diaz maybe never checked a leg kick in his life, and in certain fights he'll get eaten up. And then for some reason, other fighters won't use that strategy. So it is good to see someone cognizant of like, oh, this strategy works against this fighter. Let's use that. So that was good to see. And then kind of like what Jim said, we did see, or the oblique kicks, like that was a new tool. Yeah, that we don't really see him use often, but obviously Max saw something he liked with that, or his coaches. So I like that weapon that he was using. That spinning back kick to like the stomach. He did break it out a couple times. I know he used that in the Gaethje. It might have only been once or twice, but overall, yeah, I thought Max was doing what he needed to do. And then I guess back real quick on the Topuria was 2 for 2 on takedowns. I want to say I think the first one he got him down. Was that the one? One of them he didn't do much with. Max kind of got up, but then I can't remember. Was that one in each round or was it in the first?
I don't remember, to be honest. I know he landed one big one in the first. In the first round was the one where he got it was the first takedown he shot, and he got pretty deep, got the hands locked behind the knees, got the lift, got the big
Yeah,
takedown.
yeah.
I don't really recall off the top of my head where that second one
Look,
came from it there.
looking at the stats, both takedowns that he landed were technically in the first round. So
Okay.
it was 2 in that, and that's why I had that one in Ilia round, just because he did that and looked a little close to getting the submission. But
I thought they were both close rounds, to be
yeah,
fair. Like,
agree.
I think you can score if you had 2-0 Ilia or 2-0 Max. Like, I'm not gonna, get too upset either way. I personally, I tend to go, if it's one round that's really close and then the next round is also really close, I personally just split them,
That's
especially in a
fair, yeah.
5-round fight. You're effectively 50-50 through 2 rounds. Just split
That's
them.
why I had it Max first, Ilya second, and then I was seeing a lot of people were having it Ilya first, Max second. So like it was inverse. So that's what I was saying. I know it's kind of weird. It's kind of not how you're supposed to do it with the way you're supposed to judge per round. But I was like going into that third, it just felt like it should have been 50-50, 1-1. So
Yeah. I don't mind using a little bit of context to,
yeah.
Help score a fight. I think that's as long as people don't get too crazy with it,
Uh,
don't tell a judge that, because then they'll use that to score fights however the hell they want to. But yeah, I think effectively it's a pretty pretty smart way to approach the situation. Another thing I want to point out on the Ilya side of things that really impresses me is the way that he finds power shots, regardless of the angle or the hand, especially when he's got guys backed up. Like, and when he knocked out Volk, he lands the combination and then he shuffles a little bit, plants, throws the right hand. Here, it's get a little bit off the center, plant into a picture perfect left hook. Like his ability just to, at the drop of a dime, just like get into perfect position and then throw the most perfect hook you've ever seen and knock somebody out is ridiculous. It's like you can never be safe in there if you're in the pocket because it's like a snap of the finger, and all of a sudden you've got the hardest guy in the division hitting you. And also, when he hits you once, like Holloway didn't go down on the first one, like he got wobbled a little bit, I think, in the second, and then he got wobbled big time in the third. Um, and Topuria doesn't let him off the hook at all. I think he landed the one big one that hurt him, and then he landed at least one more that was like, oh, that was bad. That hurt him even more. And then the third one, I think, is the one that really got him out of there. So those two things, the ability just to snap out of nowhere, just land the most perfect hook, and then following up when he has guys hurt. I think those two things are connected because when you've got somebody hurt, you can really just stay in their face, and then you can put yourself in positions to land those hooks. But those two things I think are two incredible skills he has that I don't think are very common in MMA.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say too. Was I think you could tell too in that third round, it just looked like Max got, and it's not even, it's crazy because his big reaction to a wobble is nowhere near what we've seen in this sport, but it just seemed so new to him. Like eyes got wide, and it almost looked like they were already glossy. Like he had that blank stare too. Um, and which is insane. So even just seeing Max get hit like that, I was like, oh, this might be bad. And yeah, like you were saying, I don't even want to call. It's hard to call Ilya even patient, but when he does crack some and he just doesn't get wild, and I don't know, and he's obviously like I said, he's still throwing, but I don't know if you can call it patience or just his boxing is that crisp that he's never like still when he has someone rocked, putting himself in a bad position or overextending too much. He's still like continually finding like great shots while being maybe more aggressive after the wobble. And then you see it once again. It's just I guess you can't get wobbled around him because he will finish depending on maybe give or take how much time's in that round. But I'm it's got to be pretty high level of confidence that that round might be over right there if you wobble someone bad enough.
Mm-hmm. He goes to the body as well. He makes his body head immediately the second he has someone hurt. That's how he killed Jai Herbert. I think I saw that highlight 10,000 times in between Monday and by the time the fight started. But, he just makes him body head and lands to the head eventually. So I mean, best case scenario, you survive, but you got hit, you got concussed 3 times, and you got hit with 4 shots to the liver, and now you're breathing harder than you were before. Like, even best case scenario is really, really bad. And then he comes right back and hits you with another one. It's bad stuff getting rocked by Ilya.
Oh yeah, and I mean, I was surprised we didn't see more body shots in that first round because I don't even know if he landed any. I think he landed what, two or three maybe body shots in that first round, and I thought that was going to be a mix of body shots and takedown attempts, which we did see that in the first round. That's how you get Max to drop his hands down a bit, and that's when the overhands and the hooks come into play, and they're open up more. You can do a little feint and go over the top, and I expected a little more of that from Ilya, but when he did do it, it looked like it definitely hurt Max.
I think that's a credit to Max, how well Max fought in the first round, because that was the round I scored for Max, and I think he landed the lead hook a lot in that. And when you're landing that lead hook, it makes it a little bit harder to get in the pocket and throw body, and his footwork was so good in round one. So I think that's why. I don't know if it was him not being willing, but I think Max did a really good job of making it hard on him.
Yeah.
That was the other thing. I said I had two things, and one was just to be able to pick up on game plans, like what works against this fighter in the past. To obviously, you should probably look to do it again. And the other thing was, I just think it's funny is just if you can throw body shots or actually go to the body, you're like almost an elite striker already, just because no one does it. So it was fun to see that just two people that are more than capable and one of the best at it. And Jerry, I thought that was, like you said too, he didn't really throw him in the first round, but yeah, second and third, then you could really see both of the guys, all their full skill set, head, body, the leg kicks, everything. So it's overall, I think it was just a great strategical fight, or just watching two strikers show all their weapons, which, I think, like we said too, this is arguably the best fight you could make in the UFC right now, and I definitely think it shows the elite level of striking that is present in the UFC, and then also why there's a huge difference between some strikers in every division and then the elite of the elite best in the entire UFC. The difference.
Mm-hmm. I wholeheartedly agree with that, and I think after watching, I kind of believed this before watching this fight, but after watching this fight, I'm not I'm pretty confident Ilya is the best striker in the UFC. Just period. But I don't think it's crazy to say Max Holloway is number 2. I think it kind of depends on where you want to rank a guy like Pereira in terms of pure striking, but that's a lot. I mean, 205 pounds and 145 pounds, 155 pounds, it's completely different sport practically. Especially so we'll just say south of 170. I think Ilya is the best striker without a doubt. And I think Max is probably number 2. I think that's the level of striking we saw. And that's kind of tough to a guy like Volkanovski. But unfortunately, I do think he's on a little bit of a slide to where I would say the current version of Max is better than the current version of Volkanovski. I think, like we saw when they matched up, I think Volkanovski was better at one point, but I think Max has gotten a lot better since those fights. And I think Volkanovski hasn't, even if it's just their ability that's slipping. So I would say that these are probably the best and second best strikers in the UFC.
Yeah, and I mean, just you brought up Alex Pereira, like it's a difference. Max and Ilia Topuria, they're landing multiple shots. It's a lot of them. For Pereira, it just seems like it's the one powerful shot that he's going to hit you with, and it's just a matter of time when he creates space for it. But that's the two sides of it. It's the precision and the power. And that's why I think I agree with you. Ilya is the best because he does have the precision of striking, can throw out the volume. Then he also has that power that he can knock you out in a heartbeat. Also, I don't know if this had any impact in it overall, but the fact that Max threw like 200 strikes in those first 2 rounds, I wonder if he was a little gassed in that third round. I know he's thrown the most, he's landed the most shots in UFC history, so I would doubt it, but that was just something I was thinking when they first said that stat of like, oh, it's going into round 3, he has almost 200 strikes. That's a lot of output. And he only ended up landing 84 total strikes, so it's a lot of swings and misses, which fair play to Ilya's defense.
Yeah, I thought that shocked me. I didn't feel like it. He was throwing in that much when I was watching it, but when they dropped that stat, I was like, wow, because that's just an insane pace. And like you said, if there's anyone that could do it, it is Holloway. But I just thought that's an insane pace to keep up, and it's a hard opponent to keep that up against. So.
Yeah, I do think it is smart though, because like one of the things you can't let Ilya do is walk you down. Like if he's walking you down, you're in a bad spot. So you kind of almost have to throw in order to really stop him from like walking you down. So final strike counts here. Max went 84 of 209 on total strikes, 79 of 204 on significant strikes. Almost the same. That's the way they score almost every fight. Topuria, 78 of 147 and then 75 of 144. So those are the official significant strike numbers for anyone who was curious. But yeah, I think like maybe he wouldn't have been able to keep up for 5 rounds, but like you gotta do something to keep that guy out of your face, because if you don't throw and just let him walk you down, and Ilya was throwing back. It's not like Ilya was only going to go out there and throw, 50 strikes around. He was at 147 in the third. So like he was going to go out there and throw 2. So you got to give him something to prevent him from just straight up just walking you down.
And I do think too, maybe a strategy, like we were saying, obviously Max can go 5. We would love to see how good of a 5 Ilya could go. So I think maybe that is a strategy too, is just try to, really go for it first 3. And not to say that he's going to not, be the same type of volume puncher, but maybe he could bring it down a little bit more in rounds 4 and 5, depending on how Ilya's looking a little bit. So I think it still could have. I didn't, like I said, I didn't have a problem with the strategy at all. Too, I thought it was a great fight. I thought he was doing well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. So I kind of want to get everyone's thoughts on where we go next. We'll start obviously with Topuria. He is the champ, and we're talking about title fights here. So we'll go with Topuria first, and then we'll open the discussion up to Max Holloway, which I think can go a multitude of directions. But for Topuria, what do you guys want to see next? I believe the three, or we'll say four biggest names right now. Aleksandar Volkanovski is obviously the guy who ended up in the cage doing the face-off. So that one there seems pretty obvious that is in fight that the UFC is interested in. And I think Diego Lopez is another guy that is right there on the verge of a title fight. And you have Movsar Evloev and Aljamain Sterling fighting one another at UFC 310. So that is going to potentially set someone up for a future title fight. So I would say those are probably the four guys that are, I could reasonably see getting a title fight or being on a path to a title fight. Anthony, we'll swing it over to you first. What are your thoughts on how this title picture, how you would like to see this title picture shake out?
Okay, because I do think it is a great title picture, though. Right now, it's pretty good. I will say the first thing I want to say is also I know and I've been one of them. I do think Ilya is super cocky. Obviously, he backs it up every time, and it is, they always say it's the confidence versus cockiness a little bit. Like he is just so confident himself. But I thought that Volk in the octagon felt forced a little bit. I thought that was a little unnecessary, but I wanted to commend both guys. I thought it seemed like both guys didn't really want to do that whole like WWE shtick thing, and so I thought they handled it respectable. And even Volk too, I felt like he got in there, did it, and got out. Like he didn't want to take the moment away or anything. So I thought that was good. But in saying that, I personally would rather see the Lopez fight. I think Lopez has done enough. He's kind of the clear guy that's been being the number one contender, continually getting these wins, building himself up. And I can't remember how long the last fight is. But I mean, I thought Volk shouldn't have probably fought Ilya the first time because he needed time off after that knockout. So maybe it hasn't, been long enough. And I guess by the time they probably booked the next fight, that would be good. So I would say I personally do want the Lopez fight more, but I understand with the type of guy Volk is, how much he's like a company guy, but it's not like the other company guys where it's like he's just a respectable, like one of the greatest of all time. So if with his resume, if they want to, not necessarily force him in, but give him that rematch again, I can't hate on it. So he does deserve that. I guess the only thing that's holding me back is just that's technically 3 losses in a row. And it was the 2 with Makhachev and the devastating knockout against Makhachev, the second fight, and then now the devastating KO. So it makes it feel like he probably shouldn't get the immediate rematch. But then if you go back to just the featherweight resume, then I do understand it. The one thing I will say, I would just hate after the Evloev, the Movsar Sterling fight, if they put them against Lopez and now we lose one of the challengers we could have by just booking an immediate rematch with Volk. I would prefer if they at least keep the winner of the Sterling fight and Lopez separate, so that way we have 2 championship fights to look forward to if Topuria wins, or I guess if Volk wins as well. But
yeah, I'm with you. I think Diego Lopez is the right guy. I don't know if you saw the UFC's post from earlier today. I think it was arguably the dumbest Instagram post I've ever seen in my life. It said something along the lines of matchmaker for Ilia Topuria. What's next? It had Aleksandar Volkanovski, which makes sense. Then it had Islam Makhachev and Conor McGregor. In what world, first of all, could Conor make 145? Ilia does not deserve to go up to 155 yet. He has 1 title defense. Sure, he's beaten arguably 2 of the GOATs of this division. But, I mean, really, UFC, you got to do better than that on that. Just got to throw that out there. I saw that and was like, what the hell is this post? But I'm with you, Anthony. I think Diego Lopez has earned his right he beat Dan Ige on short notice, and would he have probably lost to Ige had that fight gone longer? I think so, but he didn't. He got it done. Then he goes out and beats Brian Ortega. Brian Ortega is what listed as the number 6 now ranked featherweight in the division. Not a bad loss, or not a bad win. A veteran of the sport, been around for a while, beaten some of the top dogs, fought with a lot of the top dogs. I think he's just earned it, and give us something different. Let that fight happen. Let Volk rest up a bit, and then maybe make that Ilia and Volk fight next if Ilia does beat Diego Lopez.
Yeah, one thing that is, I think so. How do I want to phrase this? One thing that I really don't understand in this whole featherweight title picture is they keep bringing up an interim title. Like the idea of a Alexander Volkanovski and Diego Lopez interim title fight at UFC 312 has been like, I've seen that. I've seen Volkanovski bring it up in at least 2 or 3 interviews. I've seen Lopez bring it up. Like these guys have both been like, oh yeah, we'll fight at 312 for the interim title. And first of all, I don't know what exactly would like warrant Ilya having someone else like fight for an interim title. He fought twice this year. So like it's not like he's inactive. Then the other part of this situation that I think is interesting is, are we going to Spain or not? Because it kind of feels like now they're going to Spain, and it kind of feels like they want to have it at forgive me for forgetting the name of the stadium.
Bernabeu, the Real Madrid stadium at the Bernabeu.
Shout out Jay for having the soccer knowledge to
Yeah.
inform us on European stadiums. But point being, it's a lot of seats in there that you got to fill. What guy can you put in there that fills the seats? And I just find it interesting, and maybe I'm just like reading the tea leaves of the situation wrong, but we have Lopez and Volkanovski have both angled themselves to fight each other for an interim bout. And we've seen Conor consistently talk about fighting Ilia. We've seen the UFC, like you said, Jerry, talk about Ilia fighting Conor. We've seen Ilia talk about fighting Conor. And we need to fill a stadium somehow in Spain. And Ilia seems like a star in Spain. Who can fill a stadium with them? I don't think it'd be at 145. I think it'd be at 155. But I'll just say that I don't think that is as crazy of a possibility as it may sound if they really want to lean into this Ilia Topuria superstardom, because he looks legit. He looks like he could hold this belt down for a while. And at the end of the day, he's 27. So do you want to make that investment in a guy that you think could hold the belt for a while? Because if he beats Conor at 27 with the Volkanovski and Holloway, I'm just saying I see the logic. Ultimately, that wouldn't be what I do. I'd probably give Volk the rematch, knowing that he gets knocked out, but you kind of have to give him the rematch considering how many times he defended the title. But at the same time, I'm not going to argue with the Diego Lopez fight at all. So that's kind of where my head's at. I think it's a little bit scattered, and I gave you guys a little bit of you might as well just call it a conspiracy theory, to be honest. That's pretty much what I laid down to you for this Ilia and Conor fight. But I'll just say that I don't think it is completely out of the realm of possibility.
And I want to just put some statement out on like the stadium that they have in Real Madrid. In Madrid, it holds technically 78,000 is what the capacity is now. I don't remember off the top of my head what the UFC record attendance is. Wasn't it the one in
the 50s?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Oh yeah, 57,000 in Melbourne. This would shatter that because this is 78,000 for a soccer game. That's not involving all the seats on the floor, all the extra seats, all the extra suites, and everything. That could very well be damn near 100,000. Because Ilia Topuria, I know some people in Spain who I don't think they follow UFC much at all. Definitely football first in terms of soccer, and they were posting about Ilia retaining the title. He is a massive superstar over there. He's up there with the Rafael Nadals, the Pau Gasol at the times. I know they're not Spanish, but Messi and Ronaldo when they were there, he's up there almost on that level already, and he's 27. If they were to have a fight there it doesn't matter who he faces. I think they could get well north of 90,000 fans in that stadium.
And for the UFC, that'd be tough to pass on.
Yeah, and if it's Conor as well, and the stadium, they've also just reconstructed and redone a bunch of stuff, so they're trying to host more and more events. They have a basketball court they can come out from underneath, a swimming pool, soccer field, obviously, football. They're trying to bring in the NFL. They're trying to make the stadium the number one marquee stadium in all of Europe and arguably all of the world. So I think they'd be open for it. Big question is, would they do a UFC fight outside? Because I don't believe it has a roof.
I wish I would have at least copied Dana's quote, but Dana has always said, "Nope, we're not doing it. Nope, we're not doing it." But after that 308 fight, he was like, "Yeah, we might have to do it." he kind of bent a little. On his, that's the one thing he's been holding down, but he did bend on the idea that he may have to do it.
I'm also wrong. They did just add a retractable roof, so looks like who would have thought? So
perfect timing.
Oh yeah. I think too, it would be nice, not nice to see, but there was like, right now there's Sugar, Pereira. They've kind of been looking. They've had superstars. I'll give them that. John Jones, but not that mega star like Conor was. So if that fight were to happen, and they really think Topuria's the guy, there would be something a little poetic, maybe that finally, Conor comes back and Topuria becomes that mega superstar finally with the fight against Conor, and essentially, kind of closing the UFC chapter on like the Conor thing, because now you finally have another mega superstar that reached that level. We'll see though as much how fans, strong UFC fans compared to casuals, compared to just everybody, how the world reacts to it. But maybe.
Yeah, I agree. And just one thing to add on that real quick is I said a couple times in post for the site is that if Conor loses this one, like his public, outside of UFC fans, like the public perception around Conor McGregor, if you lose another one, it's gonna be rough. Like he's lost too many times to still be this mega superstar, where the casual people that make him the $1.7 million draw, or the 1.7 million pay-per-view buys, those audiences I think are a little bit soured on the idea of Conor McGregor.
Also, do you think Conor could even cut to 145 at this point?
I think it'd be at 55. It doesn't have to be at 45.
No, that's fair.
Because that's why they do the interim belt. So
fair enough.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, you're good. I didn't know if we were going on to Holloway.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Swing it over to Holloway. Holloway still has the BMF title, so there are options in that regard. Otherwise, what are you guys thinking for Holloway? I think the first question that should be asked is 145 or 155. So Jerry, we can swing that over to you.
55.
Yeah.
That's all
I don't
about it.
I think it's a fairly easy question, but I just wanted to make sure we are on the same page.
I think so as well. And I thought he posted something about the Blessed Express. Like he did, thank you, blah, blah, blah. Congrats to Ilia. Great fight. And then said something along like the lines of some change is happening or something. So
I believe it was something along the lines of the Blessed Express isn't stopping, just going to a new destination or something of that effect. But he said a new destination, which to me sounded a lot like 155 pounds. So at 155, Anthony, we can swing it over to you first this time. Anthony, at 125 or at 155, excuse me. Do you put the BMF belt on the line? If you do, if you don't, what are some names or a name or however you want to throw it out there? What would you like to say? He said he wants to return International Fight Week of next year. So that is the date that he's looking at.
That's kind of a decent little layoff, but I mean, pick one. Like it's Max Holloway, and it's awesome because he has a whole new pool, and he's still competitive too. It's not like he's not competitive. too. I mean, obviously we'll have to see how he looks at although he did just look phenomenal against Gaethje at 155. So, I mean, I think you could quite honestly pick one. You could just go for the straight up fight. I don't know if they want to immediately to maybe help sell it a little bit to people. You could slap a BMF belt on it too. And then at that point I would be more curious on who the opponent is. I think you have to have a more um, specific opponent pick if you're going to put the BMF on the line. But as of right now, him just switching weight classes, I think you could pick anyone. Like Armen's one, Charles two. He already fought Gaethje. Maybe I was it just the one fight against Dustin Poirier or two fights?
He made his 2 fights, but the first one was his UFC debut when he was 20 years old. So
Uh-huh. So there's that one. I know I can't remember what Dustin last said about if he was retiring or not, or he wanted to keep going, but that would be another layup spot to maybe get Dustin another huge fight. After he did look really good in that last fight with Makachev, so that would be an easy BMF slap it on there. And then we got to see what Chandler's finally out of the shadow of the McGregor fight, so he's going to start fighting again. And then we have that Hooker fight, as amazing as he looked in his last one. So I think quite literally like 1 through 7, you can't go wrong.
No, I'm completely with you. I don't think there's any wrong option. The three I have in my mind is I think Dustin Poirier makes the most sense. I think it's two guys who are not getting up there in age, but definitely getting older, definitely coming towards the end of their reigns and as the top of their divisions. Obviously, Max is now changing divisions, it sounds like, so that's a whole new starting. I like that one a lot. I like the Dan Hooker fight just because Dan Hooker looked damn good in his last time out. And why not? My only thing is, yeah, James, you said he wanted to. Matt Holloway wants to come back at International Fight Week, I believe. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Dan Hooker fight at that Australia card in January or February, which is the only thing holding me back from that. And then maybe the other third option, in my opinion, is the loser of Oliveira and Chandler, because I think the winner either fights Sarukian for an interim title or is that next in line to fight the winner of Islam and Armen Sarukian.
yeah, I think you can go a bunch of different routes, and if you want to put the BMF belt on the line, the whole reason they started it back up at 155 is because you get to pick from Poirier, Gaethje, Holloway's obviously got it now, Hooker, Chandler. Like there isn't a bad portion of options. Um, the Fiziev fight as well, I think, is one that would be interesting. I'd like to see Fiziev get one more before maybe a fight against Holloway. Come back, get a victory before you throw him in there with Holloway. But Fiziev's a guy who's often forgot about. But when you put him in striking-based fights, they are bangers. I think I'm honestly cool as long as we don't just throw him in there with grapplers right away. Like, to me, like, this is like when you have the ability to what they've done at 55 for years is basically just match up the most entertaining guys and then match up the boring guys, and every once in a while the entertaining guys fight the boring guys for number one contenders and championship fights. It's basically what they've done. So just keep doing that. Like, it's tried, true, it works. Like, just keep doing that. And so Holloway falls in the entertaining group. Just book him against entertaining fighters. I do think the Conor fight is there for him as well. The video of Conor staring down the TV, walking past Max Holloway has been a recurring video that to be seen on Twitter recently. So I think that fight is still there as well. So you got plenty of options for Holloway. The last thing I will throw out, when Gaethje agreed to fight Max Holloway at UFC 300, he was going to fight for the title. People said, why is Gaethje taking this fight? He can fight for the title. Would you guys be opposed to Max Holloway just fighting for the 155 title? Because if he wouldn't have gone back down and fought Ilia, he probably just could have got the shot at Islam right away. Would you guys? And I think Sarukian is getting the shot first. I'll be honest. I think Sarukian. If I had to guess, I'd say that fight is happening in the January pay-per-view card. 100% honesty. Do you guys think that is a? Do you think it's a possibility? And would you like that? Would you entertain that? So kind of both sides of that question. Jerry, we can swing it over to you.
Had he not just gone back, and I know it's two different weight classes, but like on the back of all UFC fans is he just went out and got knocked out cold. Simple as that. It's like, do I think he deserves a title shot at 155 after beating the guy who was next in line? Yes. Do I think it's a smart move? Not really. And do I think after getting beat the way he did against Ilia, does he deserve it still? Like, I'm right on that fence of like, you just got smacked. I also am partially kind of scared that if he was to fight, my money's on, I'm picking Ilia or Islam in that fight against Armen at the moment. And do I really want to see Max Holloway fight Islam Makhachev after what we saw with Ilia Topuria and his 2 takedowns? I think it'd be ugly, and I think it'd be bad for Max. So I'm kind of opposed to that because I'd rather see a fun striking fight with the likes of Poirier, Hooker, Chandler, someone like that.
Yeah, I would like to see him fight once as well. I do get the logic though, but the other thing, that's just what I was going to say before we switched over, because I know the Topuria Makhachev, and people already going out or like on about Makhachev's like resume and stuff and like his defenses. Can he fight like an actual lightweight though? Can we get one of those fights out of the way? Because
Yeah.
he's building his resume off of featherweights. Like the 2 back-to-back Volk wins is insane. And then they're talking about him fighting Topuria and stuff now. It's like, no, can we? And we just listed off how that division's amazing. Can he fight those people, please? And so I get at this point though, Max would probably just be a lightweight now, but maybe and then also I can't say his first fight because he did just fight Gaethje, but I would like to see the Armen one for sure first, and then so that's why I think Holloway can just get a good entertaining fight, and just to see how he even looks too after the granite chin's finally broken. Now he's going up with some heavy hitters in that division. See how that holds up. So I would like to personally see maybe Max just fight, one of those fun, entertaining fights first. And now if he wins that, I'm not gonna not say he can fight for the title after that. I mean, I'm there for it. But me personally, I'm not I'm not in love, I'll say, with the idea of it's like immediate like title shot. Just wait for it.
I do just want to bounce off. Sorry, James, for interrupting. But I just want to say off that, like, of Islam fighting all these 145 guys and mostly Volk just twice. The issue is like you have Gaethje lined up, Poirier was lined up as well. You have these guys in 155, and they just keep beating themselves up. It's just you're having all these entertaining fighters go at it, and the guy who's next in line always seems to be losing the fight. So it's like they're not making it easy on Islam having to fight someone in this division at the moment because everyone's beating everyone below him, and you could throw anyone in there and see what happens at this point.
And the one other thing, I still want to see the Oliveira fight again because give or take, he beat him, pretty solidly. I can't remember if it was round 2, but Charles, unlike Islam, Charles had to fight Poirier, Gaethje, Chandler, like he was on an insane like 4-fight run that of just killers, and then you just can't do that forever. So now that he's taken some breaks in and out, like if he can, get to the title again, I would still want to see that one again in a different type of scenario leading up to it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Last thing I'll add on this one before we go down to the co-main event. I don't know how Max Holloway does against grapplers at 155 pounds. I literally have no idea. No clue. Islam, Armen, Gamrot, don't care. No idea. Charles, I have no idea. No idea how he does in defending the grappling. But I think will absolutely dummy some of these guys in striking matchups. Like we saw the start of it against Gaethje. I think if you book him against 2 or 3 of these guys in striking-based fights, I think if we booked him and Poirier for International Fight Week, I think he knocks Poirier out. Chandler, I think he knocks him. I think he knocks out like these guys who we think are really good strikers at 145. I think Max Holloway is at a very good point in his career, assuming his chin is not absolutely toast, which I am cautiously optimistic that he will be okay because he did go down, but I don't know if he ever went out cold. He clean knockout, got knocked out, but it wasn't like he was out there like Volkanovski was 2 knockouts were worse if you're just comparing knockouts. So I'm cautiously optimistic that the chin is going to be okay. As long as that's the case, I think he dummies some of these guys in striking-based fights at 55. Hooker, I think he does Hooker bad, but maybe that's just my confidence in Holloway. So just want to throw that out there before we move down to the co-main. All right, co-main event. 45 minutes in, we got to the co-main. But that's all right. I honestly like it because it's Max Holloway and Ilia Topuria. You only get so many of those.
Yes.
All right. Now in the co-main, we had Khamzat Chimaev, Robert Whittaker. I just want to kind of lead this one off by saying I've given Khamzat a lot of crap in the past. I have an article on the site titled Khamzat Chimaev made a fool of himself at UFC 279, I believe it was, which was the night he was supposed to fight Nate Diaz and ended up fighting Kevin Holland. So I have never been someone who just blindly, loved Chimaev. Nothing to do with his skills, but I think he's done a lot of things outside of the octagon promotionally that has not gone well. He hasn't been healthy. He's pulled out of fights. Sometimes you can't control those aspects of the fight. But I think in this one, I think Chimaev did a great job of zero issues in the lead up, makes it to the fight, looks good in the fight. The post fight even was the most calm we've seen Chimaev in a post fight. It's almost like it's a new guy in comparison to the Chimaev we saw 2 years ago, or whenever he lost Feld. It's been a minute, or he fought a year ago against Usman, and then it was a year probably since the Holland fight before that. So, as someone who has been there to criticize Chimaev at every step, I will say this time I really have no criticisms because he did a lot of things right that I have criticized him for doing wrong in the past. So I have to give credit to him considering I've been on the opposite side of that. But for you guys, what did you make of Chimaev's performance in the co-main event? Forgot whose turn it is to lead us off. Jerry, I actually think it is yours. So we'll have you start us off.
Pure domination. That's the simplest way to put it up. I was skeptical of Khamzat as well. I mean, I was like, he beat Kamaru Usman up a division on 10 days' notice. That's nothing special. He beat Kevin Holland. We know what Kevin Holland's all about. He's either win really fast, put on a show, or get killed immediately. Gilbert Burns had me a little skeptical. And this fight, the Whittaker fight, was exactly what we kind of talked about last week. It was either going to be a long fight that we think Whittaker would have ultimately won, or Khamzat was going to come out and just get him done in the first round and a half, and that's what he did. I was amazed how easily he took down Bobby Knuckles. I think he had 2 takedowns in the first round. I mean, it only went 3.5 minutes, but he looked so good, so strong, so quick. And I know that I assume you guys saw the picture of Robert Whittaker's jaw after the fight. The damage he did, not even getting under the chin, just the cranking on the jaw is immense. That he's a real problem. There's a reason he jumped up 10 spots to that number 3 ranking in the UFC middleweight division. He looks good. He looks so much more mature as a fighter and as a person. Going off of kind of what you said, James, of especially his post-fight interview, he's not yelling at everybody, calling out everybody. He actually seemed kind of calm in there for a change, as calm as you can be for Khamzat Chimaev. But I was very impressed in the octagon after the fight, the whole week building up, because we've had issues time and time again with him. And I think we're into a new era of the Khamzat Chimaev show, and I'm very excited to see what's up next for him.
Yeah. And then I think even funny on the pre-fight, I thought like in the pre-fight press conference, he seemed more mature, which was actually scary because I was like, oh, I think I'd prefer him to be the wild stuff. Like this is actually unnerving, not a good sign leading into this fight. And then, fight starts. Rob lands 2 great strikes. And I was like, okay, this is what we need. Immediate shot. And then, fighting, surviving, broke away. It said, Chimaev went 2 for 4. When I was watching that fight, I thought it was just 2 for 2. I didn't know where the defenses came down. I know he was struggling to get him down, but it was already kind of we're just fighting. And then Rob couldn't just get away. And then I saw it when it was happening. Chimaev literally just did 2 or 3 strikes to the head, and Rob moves his hand, and then immediately in a second, Chimaev snaps down. And then, I mean, the kind of unfortunate freak uh, jaw break there or whatever with I saw the pictures with his teeth and stuff, but I guess it's happened. I saw Corey Anderson posted it's happened to him, and then there was one other fighter I saw on Twitter, but both of those were like through strikes and stuff. So kind of a freak thing that happened to the head, because when it first happened, I was like, oh my god, why did he tap that fast? Because it wasn't under the chin too. So, but I mean, you
Short
can't
time on the
really
clock as well.
control. Yeah, so that's what I was. You can't really, and I'm not gonna put like obviously even as a Rob fan, I can't sit here and be like. I will say, I mean, it was obviously a freak thing, but there was still enough time on the clock to where I don't know if he's really getting out of there as much as optimistic as I could be. But it's unfortunate. I do truly wish you could see it get under the chin and the full drawn out kind of, is he gonna tap, is he not, and then he taps thing. But what are you gonna do? That good. Yeah, Chimaev looked awesome and got him out in the first.
Yeah, and from the fight itself, I mean, Chimaev, great double leg, goes double leg, gets the takedowns. Like, there's a lot of guys in modern MMA that are quote unquote good wrestlers who you will never see shoot an actual takedown. They just try to go clinch and then clinch takedowns, or to the clinch and then work to a double leg. They don't actually shoot the double leg itself from the outside, which Chimaev did, and he landed the takedown. It's crazy how good wrestlers use wrestling from a more traditional perspective and then get good results. Who would have thought? Anyways, from that point, I thought Whittaker was doing a great job from bottom. He wasn't getting up. But one of the things Chimaev is elite at is getting guys off the fence enough to take their back. And that's what he was doing for the whole first round. He was hunting for the back. And Whittaker, no matter what Chimaev did, Whittaker would end a scramble or a position change or whatever. He would end it with something that was blocking Chimaev. He would usually have a hip against the fence, but something that would be preventing Chimaev from taking the back. And I was thinking to myself, this is great work. At the same time, you're not getting up, so it's a little bit of quote unquote great work. But in terms of survive and advance to the second round, which I think that's what a lot of people wanted to see from Whittaker in the first round specifically. He was doing a lot of great things. Even when Chimaev did take the back at one point, there was he blocked the second hook from getting in and reverses. He didn't get up, but like there was a previous back take before the final one that ended the fight that he denied and did a good job denying that. So I think Whittaker did a lot of good things defensively prior to that. On the flip side, what I want to praise Chimaev for is I think he showed a lot of patience. It's one thing from Chimaev is he's so aggressive and he's so dangerous, but in that fight he showed patience, which I think is crucial in terms of, are you going to gas out? Like, you're going to gas out if you're acting crazy and putting 110% effort into things, and especially in grappling. But when you're patient, the chances that you're going to patient and calm. You're just patient and calm. When you're those two things, it's less likely that you're going to gas out. So we didn't get to see that portion of the fight, but I think that for Chimaev long term, that is something that I think was noticeable and important, was that he was calm while he was in there working from top position. So I thought I saw things I like from both guys. Ultimately, it was Chimaev getting out of there in the first round, but I don't think this was a bad fight by any means.
Not at all.
No, I was saying, it just sucks that I don't even know really what the time off and stuff like that looks like for something like that. It was pretty crazy. I could see too, obviously watching a lot of Rob fights, the way he was reacting after the fight, just the way it looked like he was keeping his face, not really talking. He just had like the wide mouth, like he was tired, but he wasn't like breathing heavy. And so I was like, what the heck? And then finally it came out after the post fight where, yeah, he showed that picture and yikes.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
This also shows the power that Khamzat has.
To do that much that quick too,
especially in like pure grappling scenarios. Yeah. Like I can't imagine what his grip strength is.
They should do that one thing. I saw before the last pay-per-view, they were bringing it out, the grip thing.
That is funny. All right. So for Chimaev, do you guys think is it title fight next? And if it is title fight next, is it skip Sean Strickland to get the title fight? Anthony, you can lead us off on that one.
Yeah, I'll keep it quick. I don't really think I can't remember Sean's last fight. I don't know. I was pretty against him fighting for the title, anyways. So, um, I think if you beat Robert Whittaker, you can fight for the title. So I'm fine with it. I don't even know if they want to do the Strickland or Chimaev. I don't care. I just think, yeah, DDP seems pretty fun enough to where, and any fight can kind of he's gonna have his flaws, so it's gonna be competitive, right? When you break it down, like, oh, he could do this, or the challenger could do this. So it's fine to me. I'm fine with the Chimaev title fight or Chimaev Strickland if they really have to do a contender, because I know the UFC loves Strickland, but either way, I'm fine.
Sean Strickland got beat fair and square by DDP in the first fight, in my opinion. I think he did not deserve to win that belt. I don't think he deserves a rematch right now after not having fought anyone. Keep it quick and easy. Give me that Khamzat shot in, February they were talking about in Australia. I'm fine with that. Make the co-main, for all I care, Sean Strickland and Izzy rematch. That's fine with me, but I'm like, you lost the belt. You don't deserve to immediately fight the belt. You weren't a dominant champion. You're honestly not a very all-around mixed martial artist. You kind of can throw some punches here and there, and you had a gas tank that outlasts Izzy. Props to you for that, for getting the belt, but I would much rather see Khamzat fight DDP than Sean Strickland. I think it would be a much more exciting fight. Don't know if it would go the distance, but it would be very entertaining, unlike I think the Sean Strickland rematch would be. So I think if Sean was to fight DDP again, he'd play it like the Izzy fight and just try and jab and move and kind of keep his distance, but land a bit more strikes and avoid the takedowns.
Yeah. I could care less. Well, first of all, this is the part of the podcast where I get to say negative things about Sean Strickland. So here we go. But I'll be a little bit shorter than I usually am when we say negative things about Sean. The fight against Paulo Costa is his most recent fight. That fight absolutely sucked.
Yeah, I forgot about that fight. That's how bad it was.
In terms of when we said earlier, oh, we don't want to call fighters dumb. Some guys just can't come up with a game plan. Paulo Costa, I mean, dumb as a box of rocks in that one. Worst game plan you've ever seen. And Sean took advantage of that to the most boring decision you've ever seen. Every Sean fight is never really that entertaining. You have to listen to him talk about, oh, we're going to do the man dance, we're going to war, yada, yada, yada. Then it's a close decision that somehow becomes splits when he really just lost the fight, and it shouldn't have been a split. But then since it was a split, his fans can say he should have won. And yeah, and you know what? I'm not even on like a screw Sean Strickland type of thing. I'd like to see like Chimaev, when we're talking about needing stars, like Chimaev has that potential. And like I'd like to see him pick up some positive momentum. And I don't think we should be in a point in time where it looks like we can like string together some positive momentum for him. You have a very compelling matchup for him to be a champion, a competitive fight, in my opinion. Probably a guy that can give him the most competitive fight out of anyone, just in terms of pure physicality. And there's no reason to keep him sidelined at the point in time where we finally think you can start to pick up some momentum with him, just in terms of fighting more frequently. So, yeah, I'm all in for Chimaev next. I think he earned it, and I think he earned it more than Strickland, because guess what? We could have had Strickland versus Whittaker, and Strickland could have beat Whittaker, and I wouldn't have complained at all about him fighting for the title. But he didn't want to fight Whittaker. So, sorry, you just got jumped by the guy willing to fight Whittaker.
I want to give Sean Strickland the same treatment we give Cyril Gahn now.
Yeah,
it's you don't want to fight for anybody unless it's for the title. Tough. You're going to miss out on your opportunities.
Also, that is a good point, James, too. Maybe we shouldn't. It's good to get Chimaev back in there, because if you do another fight with Strickland, I think try to take all of the the outside stuff away from it. He has a bad record of being ready for one, not being ready for the next and stuff like that. So the less fights we give him, if he already deserves it, it's maybe better just to get him in there sooner rather than later.
Yeah. Last thing I will add, I think we should do Sean Strickland versus Anthony Hernandez. Let's do that one and see how that goes for good old Sean. All right. Moving down the card, Magomed Ankalaev, Aleksandar Rakic. Jerry, it's your turn to lead us off here. What'd you make of this light heavyweight title eliminator?
So
and let's stress title eliminator because you wouldn't be able to tell it was a title eliminator if you took the numbers off the screen and didn't say it was for a title eliminator.
I'm sorry, I fell asleep when you were announcing their names. I mean, God, this fight was, in my opinion, the worst fight in the entire card. I don't really have much to say apart from, okay, Ankalaev, you won. You've earned it. You finally get your Alex Pereira shot because he's already beat the hell out of Yuri twice, beat the hell out of Jamal Hill. That's fair, but like the fight itself was just not intriguing. He says he wants to stand up and do all this stuff. He landed 75 total strikes. Didn't attempt a single takedown. Rakic was the only one who attempted to take down. I expected a little bit more from this fight, but this is kind of how I expected to go. Of the 5 main card fights, this was going to be the middle one where I'm like, all right, this is a good time to go get some food, go to the bathroom, refresh, wait for the co in the main. But props to Ankalaev. He ultimately did what he had to do. I don't know why, but I had Rakic winning that first round because he landed, it looked like more significant leg shots, some kicks to the head. He was using his legs, and then it looked like he just tired out. And Ankalaev made it a much closer in terms of just the space between them fight, and it benefited him. Still don't know what damage he really did. Neither guy really did much, and it was a weird fight. But hey, it was what it was.
Yeah, I kind of already forgot how I had it even scored because that's just, I think we called it when coming into this one. The fight was a whole lot of mid. It's fine. I guess it did, as Ankalaev was like, supposed to be the scary grappler. I thought his striking is fine. It's, it's definitely better than some other light heavyweights, which is also extremely low bar. But I like you said, Jerry, I think finally our other main problem with Ankalaev always saying, "Oh, it should be his title shot. Should be his title shot." Well, he finally got that win. There you go. Pereira's cleaned out a lot of the other contenders, so it's finally they can book the fight. I won't have any problems with it, no issues. I think it's fine, and we'll see what happens. Maybe Ankalaev will shock the world, but probably not, and I will be there for it when he doesn't.
0 takedowns against Rakic. He does 0 takedowns against Alex Pereira. Left hook.
I hope he does.
Yeah. And this is the thing with, I've said it before, the fight. He'll come in with the dumbest game plan of all time. Aleksandar Rakic, the one thing he's good at is like playing like we're going to trade kicks from the outside. And Rakic went in there and just traded kicks from the outside until Rakic just kind of gassed out and couldn't play trade kicks from the outside anymore. Like he didn't wrestle, he didn't get in the pocket and box. Rakic has the worst striking defense you've ever seen when he's exiting the pocket. Like he's there to be hit all day. That's why Yuri hit him all day. It was crazy. I thought Magomed Ankalaev lost the first round, and he lost the first round so clearly that all 3 judges scored it 29-28. I haven't looked at the scorecards, but I'm pretty confident they scored the round they scored for Rakic had to have been the first round. So you couldn't tell by the commentary team, though, because you would have thought Magomed Ankalaev was up there walking on water the way they were talking about him. But somehow the judges in Abu Dhabi scored it against the guy named Magomed. So he could have been doing that good if that was the case.
That should tell you.
Yeah, exactly.
After the first fight of the night.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That was insane. But yeah, he goes out there, lands like 2 solid straights in the first round. That's kind of all he landed that significant. But yeah, he rightfully won the fight in the second and third round, but he did it with the worst game plan. It didn't look that impressive. Like, I don't know, man. It's just hard for me to like get animated to like defend Rocket or defend Magomed and say like positive things about him when this is what we get every time he goes in there and fights. And then it's like why he knocked out in his last fight, he knocked out Johnny Walker, and everyone was like, "Oh my god, this guy knocked out Johnny Walker. Can you believe it?" And it's like, yeah, I can. I've seen it 100 times. Everybody knocks out Johnny. I can believe it. So, yeah, give him the title fight. Thankfully for him, Pereira beat everybody else that you could possibly come up with for contention. So even if you wanted to say he doesn't deserve a title, you
Have no option.
couldn't find a name. So congrats, you got the title fight. It's partially by your doing, but partially by Pereira's doing. So credit to you. So they couldn't even go find another Roundtree. If they wanted to go dig in the bottom of the ranks to find a guy, they'd have to pull up like Carlos Olberg, which look, so Roundtree was a pull to get him, but Olberg would be like, oh my god, that'd be he hasn't even passed the Anthony Smith test, I don't think. So
neither has Alex Pereira. Screw it. Yeah. Khamzat Chimaev move up to 205 and fight Alex Pereira.
So,
no.
All right. Anything else here on this exciting light heavyweight title eliminator?
At least we didn't get a draw this time for
Ankalaev
with a title shot on the line.
And not a no contest. So we got a decision that was a win or a loss. So that's all you can ask for from Ankalaev.
Yeah. Absolutely.
All right. We'll swing it down to a much more exciting fight. And funny enough, this was featherweights. Who would have thought the featherweights gave you a better fight than the light heavyweights? I could have never possibly imagined. And they were ranked outside the top 10, both of them. Dan Ige, Lerone Murphy, go out there. 29-28 Murphy, all three scorecards. I guess I want to start off with you guys. It was a close fight. Did you guys think Murphy was the rightful winner? Anthony, we can swing it over to you first.
I thought so. I think when I watched it, I remember it was close. I'm trying to think exactly if I was like, ooh, I don't know which way it's gonna go when it came down to the judges. But I ultimately I thought Murphy won that fight. I'd have to go, look back around, but I'm looking at the stats right here, and he more total, more significant, more takedowns, and shot 3 for 5. But overall, I just thought it was the right call, and I thought it was a pretty entertaining fight. I think it worked out, and I thought both guys looked good too. So.
Yeah, I'm with you. I scored it. First round I had Dan Ige winning it. He looked good. He looked like the Dan Ige that fought against Diego Lopez. And then his gas tank just drained. It was so weird because we saw him fight on 3 or 4 hours notice and looked damn good. Looked like he was going to win that fight if it went to 5 rounds. This time he won the first round, in my opinion, and then lost the next 2 pretty comfortably. So I do agree. I think the decision was the right call, but I was shocked that Dan Ige, with a full training camp, didn't look as aggressive and as fresh as he did off of 4 hours notice.
Yeah. I also had Murphy winning the fight. I think the third round was close. I think it was a pretty clear 1-1 going into 3. Fairly close third round. So I just wanted to gauge your guys' opinions. But yeah, I just thought in that third round, Murphy was the guy landing the more significant strikes. And I thought Murphy fought a pretty good fight overall. He might have won the first fight the first round if he didn't get dropped. But that round was pretty close. Ige is doing like what he does really well, pressuring, switching stances, landing power with both hands. It was a really good first round from Ige. Murphy did a lot of really good things in there as well. I think, Ige is just simply, this isn't the type of win for Lerone Murphy that makes you go, oh, that guy's going to win the title, or not even saying he would beat Ilia, but like just generally speaking, regardless of division. But I think it's very hard to go out there and look just lights out against Dan Ige, especially if you're not grappling. Maybe if you're going to grapple, maybe you can go out there and look lights out a little bit easier. But just going out there and they mostly struck, mixed in some grappling. But, I just think it's hard to go out there and look like a massive, massive favorite in a future title contender against Dan Ige. It's just not easy to do. So I think this is the one where you kind of squeeze out your, decision win, and he gets to move up the rankings, and Now you got to start rallying some more impressive performances. But overall, I liked what I saw from Murphy and think he's still on a pretty good trajectory. So
That's what, like I said before the fight, I think Ige is one of those truly like gatekeepers where, like, if anything, kind of like you said, it's hard to look phenomenal against him. I think it's more important just to beat him and just to win, and that gives you validity to where now you're a ranked guy. You're gonna be up there. We could start maybe talking title talks depending on how your next couple fights go. So I thought that was huge in saying Murphy's last fight was like the main one I was keyed into. Uh, watch this one. It's back-to-back fights. I'm impressed. I like what I saw, so I am excited for how these top 5, top 10 fights starts looking.
Yeah, I mean, a little biased, but love seeing the English guy get the win. But props to Dan Ige. He has been such a dog this year. He might be 0-2 this year, but I don't know. Did he win before? Did he win early on in the year?
he had the win over Feely. I don't know if it was early this year, late last year,
Yeah,
but
but either way,
whatever the case.
he's been a dog this year. Hats off to him. He just came out on the wrong side or on the unfortunate side today or this past weekend.
Yeah. And for Lerone Murphy, he's, his only 2 fights in the rankings that he's fought are Danny Ige, Edson Barbosa. Won them both. Like, two pretty good names for someone entering the featherweight rankings. And now, he's up to the 11th spot in the rankings. So in front of him, he's got Calvin Kattar, Aljamain Sterling, Josh Emmett, Arnold Allen, who probably won't fight because both Englishmen. Allen was in the corner. I imagine they've had their fair share of wars in the training room. And then you're looking at guys like Ortega, Evloev, Rodriguez. So, and then you're looking at Lopez, Holloway, Volkanovski after that. So, what are you guys looking at for Lerone Murphy? Are there any names that stand out to you from the rest? Jerry, we can swing it over to you first.
I think there's 2 names, and I don't really want to see him fight necessarily a grappler right now. I think he's more fun fighting a stand-up guy. So give me either Josh Emmett or even Calvin Kattar. I think those are the 2 names that really stand out. I think he called out Josh, if I'm not mistaken, he called out Josh Emmett after the fight. Love that idea. I honestly think he could piece up Josh Emmett. I think it's the power versus precision thing. And sure, if Josh Emmett lands on him, he might go to sleep. But there's always that chance that he just pieces him up, keeps his distance. I think Lerone Murphy has very good defense and could make a move up there. And I think that's a good one to fight a guy who's been contending for fought for the interim title and has been fighting these top guys to kind of see his status against current guys who are really good, not guys who were good 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, just looking at the rankings right now, my first 2 that kind of really popped off was Emmett, or I thought even maybe an Ortega fight, but I kind of was leaning Emmett first. And if you said that's who he called out, then perfect. I'm on board.
Yeah, I'd agree with Emmett as well. I think Ortega may also be jumping to 55 as well.
Yeah.
I believe that was still his it was originally his plan, then he goes from fighting in June to fighting in September and kind of messes things up. But I still think 155 is his plan. So if they were to update these featherweight rankings and take out Holloway and Ortega both jumping up to 55, all of a sudden a couple of these guys are jumping up some spots. So Arnold Allen would go from 7 to 5. It's a pretty big difference in public perception for guys like that. But yeah, I think Josh Emmett makes a lot of sense. And then I think if you beat Emmett, so some of these grapplers are booked, right? Evloev and Sterling are booked against one another. Lopez is not fighting Lerone Murphy right now. So then I think you go Lerone Murphy versus Emmett, and then he wins. And then I think one of those 3 big grapplers would kind of be opened up, and he could test himself against a grappler after he beats Emmett. And not to say Emmett isn't a good grappler. He's got a wrestling background, but he's not going to go out there. And, when you're game planning for Josh Emmett, you're not like, oh my God, we have to stop the takedown. That's not really the mission for the day. So, yeah, that's kind of the route I would take him. And, maybe a matchup with a guy like Ilia Rodriguez down the line would be a fun one as well, assuming his training partner, Arnold Allen, does not get that one. So that's kind of my thoughts on the future future trajectory for Murphy. All right. Last fight on this main card, Shara Bullet versus Armen Petroysan. Shara Bullet pulls one out here. I've never seen this one. Double spinning spinning back fist. Uses the first spinning back fist to set up the second one. That he landed and knocked out Armen Petroysan with. Great shot. Great shot. Think this performance impressed a lot of people. What were you guys' reactions to Shara Bullet's knockout? Jerry, your turn to lead us off here.
I mean, the knockout itself was very impressive. I will say, double spinning back fist and going one way and then swinging back the other way. That was awesome. Love to see that. And the way he kind of just knocked him and walked off. But the hype train suddenly just jumped up. And as we talked last week, throw him against literally anybody that has any sort of real striking or ground defense, ground game, he's losing. I don't think my stock's gone up a bunch on him. Obviously, he's up to number 14 in the rankings.
Insane.
Insane. Are you serious?
That's insane.
Do I think he's better
than
Michelle Pereira? No. I think Michelle Pereira beats him in a landslide. He's jumped up to 13. He's below Anthony Fluffy Hernandez by one spot.
Could you imagine? If they book Shara Bullet versus Fluffy Hernandez? We can have Fluffy fight Shara Bullet before he fights Sean, and he'd win both of them.
Just let him do it. I was not impressed. I thought he was like, the knockout was cool. And that's what people will see in social media will see and be like, yo, he's the real deal. The UFC saying like, oh my God, this guy's such a good striker, all this. He's nothing more than a bottom of the rankings guy at his peak. And I have a couple of guys I want to see him fight next, but we'll get into that in a second.
Yeah, exact same thing. That knockout was awesome. I thought it was pretty cool. I thought, well, we kind of said it. Yeah, I didn't think he was that good just to begin with, like as everyone was hyping him up. So even with this knockout, it showed me it's like, oh, he could put on, entertaining fights against bad opponents or mid opponents like they keep giving him. So at least he can perform in that way. Like you can keep kind of selling some fights or putting fights somewhere on pay-per-views, or Shara Bullet can be a great headliner of the prelims. So he could do those well, but I also agree, unless he can prove me wrong, but exactly like you said, Jerry, I think they start matching him up against actual top highly ranked fighters, I don't see it going that well for him. The fact that he's ranked 14 is insane because now they can't even match him up against mid fighters. He's going to have to fight a good fighter. So I don't know if that was the right move, but we'll see. I could see like him being like a Kevin Holland level. Obviously, I think Kevin Holland's better, but like someone you can pick and choose fights that you're like, okay, I'll watch that. But ranking him at 14, I don't know about that move.
I would take Kevin Holland over him if Kevin Holland moved back up to middleweight.
If Kevin Holland would just agree to grapple somebody, he would absolutely submit him in the first round. But yeah, like his performance was like fine. Like Petroysan, it's not like Petroysan wasn't having success in striking exchanges either. Like he, might have ended up winning that fight if it goes to decision. Obviously, Shara Bullet gets the job done. But like what we've seen from him is he has been a guy who has fought on these fight cards in the Middle East where he was a co-main event of a fight night, which he shouldn't have even been the co-main of that because he was placed over Figgy and Cheeto, which is ridiculous card placement anyways. But regardless of that, he can be a guy who can be fun on a main card or fun on a prelim. But, the thing that I don't like is when we start to sell these guys who are fun fighters as champions. And the Kevin Holland comparison makes a lot of sense, regardless of the skill of it. Neither of them are champions, but if they're both just going to come in and like put on fun fights, then I'm fine. Let's put on some fun fights and let's enjoy watching them fight. I'm not going to hate on that at all. But when we start ranking and when we start going out there, we rank him without even him beating a ranked opponent to begin with. And then when you take him. Then you got to bump a guy like Chris Curtis from the rankings. Who Chris Curtis just got robbed against Brendan Allen, blind as day. And I just don't like when the entertaining guy becomes like, oh, a prospect that could like move up the rankings. Like, no. Just because he's got a 15-0 record does not mean he's a legit prospect. And eventually the UFC is going to run out of guys who can strike well enough to be in the UFC and absolutely cannot grapple. Because that's what he's been fighting. Like, Armen Petroysan cannot grapple. I picked Adolfo Vieira and bet Adolfo Vieira in Petrosyan's last fight because Vieira can grapple and Petrosyan couldn't. Ola Jacek got subbed in an armbar in 4 seconds against Kevin Holland, and he took down Shara Bullet. Like, it's just kind of ridiculous when you look at it like that. I don't want to rant about this for too long, but the overall point here, he can't really grapple. He can't grapple at all. And the only thing that I'm really thinking is who can we put him against that he would be a favorite, and then they'd go grapple him, and we'd hit on an underdog. Like, if he fought Jack Hermanson, people may just tell you, like, oh, he's washed. We'll bet on Shara Bullet. Like, and then Jack Hermanson would go out there and just wash him in the grappling. Give me
Pereira. Like, actually, give me that fight because we know how dangerous Pereira is, and he just got smacked about his last fight as well. So him coming off a loss, Shara coming off the highlight reel knockout, those odds are going to be very skewed.
Yeah. I think another one that would be fun is Joe Pyfer. Everyone forgets that Joe Pyfer can grapple a little bit just because he's big and knocks people out. And I think that may be one that they can kind of sell a little bit and may be able to get Joe Pyfer at a decent price. What I don't want is like Bo Nickel just to go out. That's probably why he made it to the rankings. That's going to be Bo Nickel's ranked fight to get him up to a title fight is Shara Magomedov. And it's like, oh, yeah, now we have the same issue but reverse. It's like that's what'll end up happening.
I mean, I'm excited for that next Bo Nickel fight with Paul Craig, but like,
yeah,
if Bo Nickel went in the octagon with Shara,
he'd sub him in 12 seconds. Like, it'd be the fastest. I don't know what the record is for fastest sub in UFC history, but Bo Nickel should try for it in that one.
Fastest sub in the UFC history looks like it was 9 seconds at UFC 6. Anthony Macias versus Oleg Taktarov.
UFC 6.
UFC 6. So,
all right, Bo. That's a tough
records
time
are meant to be broken.
Well, I'm definitely know what I'm watching after the show ends. Got to see how you submit something in 9 seconds.
That's funny. All right. Anything else to throw out here on this Shara Bullet and Armen Petroysan before we hit on some final thoughts for the card? Nothing. No. All right. UFC 308 final thoughts. We hit on the main card fights. Feel free to hit on the main card fights again if you guys have a final thought from that section of the fights. But otherwise, prelims, we had, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 prelim fights. What stood out to you guys? Anthony, I believe it is your turn to lead us off. Anything that stood out to you from the prelims?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just pick up on the same two that I picked when we were doing our, last podcast, the ones that could be it. And I didn't get to see these all the way through, but I saw the Kennedy kind of, finishing sequence against Barnett, and it looked like I couldn't tell what was happening. So I was like, what happened during the fight? No, it turns out it was before the fight. He was jumping around and blew out his leg or something. So, I mean, that's kind of unfortunate. And then same thing with the Jeff Neal, because I turned it on right after that. And I was like, oh, okay. Wow, Jeff Neal, we joked about it. Like, RDA is pretty tough to finish. And I was like, oh, you knocked him out. That shows you. And then I saw RDA blew out his knee. So kind of, doesn't quite count as like a knockout, but I thought it was funny. Both those two fights ended up in knockouts. And then the last thing, I'm sure one of you guys will pick up. I didn't get to watch that Rebecca Orbaugh fight, but they said it was maybe the fight of the night. So.
Yeah, I'll just bounce off that, and James, I'll let you expand on it after. But like that Rebecca and Orlobby fight was superb. That was clearly fight of the night, in my opinion. It was one of the best fights I've seen in a while. So loved that one. The other two I'm going to shout out. One's positive, one's negative. There's a reason they moved Ibo Aslan up to the main prelim, to the featured prelim over Jeff Neal and RDA. He looked damn good against Rafael Sequeira. Props to him. Hats off. He, I think, opened at a minus odd or at plus odds, so that's even more impressive. 14-1 now. And hey, his last UFC fight, he beat the Pleasure Boy. So
the Pleasure Man. Come on, have some respect, damn it.
But my other one I want to point out, and this is going to be a slight rant. How the hell did Carlos Leal not win that decision? Everywhere I saw was 29-28 to Leal. Somehow, those judges in Abu Dhabi for the first fight scored it in favor of Rinat something of
Fakhretdinov.
That had my mind blown. Watching that fight, I scored it to 2-1 for Carlos Leal. My scorecards aren't always exactly great, but I'm getting more and more consistent. And this fight looked like the majority of people were scoring it the same way. Highway robbery. The judge that gave it 30-27 to Fakhretdinov, I can't believe they kept him around for the rest of the night.
Yeah. So just to bounce off those two things that you just talked about, I don't think a single media member scored that fight for Fakhretdinov.
Mm-hmm.
And let's just, it was a terrible decision, probably corrupt.
Yeah.
I'm sure the fact that Judge Hadi Mohammed Ali, who has never scored a fight for the UFC, or all of his fights that he scored have been PFL or UFC fights in Saudi Arabia or Abu Dhabi. Never scored fights stateside, so surely that had nothing to do with the fact that he scored all 3 rounds for Fakhretdinov. Nothing to do with it. Yeah, it was a pretty terrible decision. It was so bad that I didn't think it was going to be a robbery when they started reading the scorecards. I was like, oh, they're going to rob this guy, Carlos Leal. And then they said, the judges scored the contest 29-28, 29-28, and 30-27. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, when they said judges scored the contest, I was like, oh, they're going to rob him. Then they read out the 3 scorecards, and I'm like, oh, no, they didn't rob him. And I was watching the fight with 2 friends who both had bets on Leal. I did not. And I was like, if he wins, I'm going to be pissed. I didn't bet on him with you guys. And then when they hit Rinat Fakhretdinov, I was like, oh, my God. That's how bad of a robbery it was. That when they said just the scorecards without the names, I was like, oh, good bets, guys. They didn't screw him over. That's the type of robbery that was.
I took the opposite side. For some reason, I put some money on Fakhretdinov. So from that side of things, I'll take it. But, God, it was so bad. He should not have won that fight.
Yeah, and I was sitting there, and then I was like, all right, so I've got bets on Bruno Ferreira against Abus Magomedov, and I've got a bet on Armen Petroysan against Shara Magomedov. So this isn't going to go very well for me personally. Both those guys ended up getting finished, but Orblai, Rebecki, amazing fight, like you said, Jerry. I wouldn't add much. One of the bloodiest fights I've seen in a while as well. Crazy cut for Rebecki, was off a headbutt. Can't believe that fight wasn't stopped for Orblai's eye that was clearly closed. When the doctor came in, checked his eye, and did the legit test where they covered the good eye, pretty sure he guessed, hey, I got a 20% chance it's going to be 1 through 5. I'm going to say one of these numbers and let it rip. He said 2. He got it right. I don't know if he could see him holding up the 2 fingers, but credit to him for his guessing game. And then before the 3rd round, they said, doctor, don't even bother coming here. They left the doctor outside of the octagon because they knew if we bring him in, we're going to have to stop it. So they just, hey, man, you take a seat, pretend like this isn't happening right now. So still really good fight as well. So last thing I'll add.
Both of them could have won in the 3rd round as well. Like, both of them had their moments where it looked like that fight could have been finished, just the way everyone was bleeding and the shots got moving. So
yeah. That was a crazy split decision. I don't know how you score that fight for Orblai. He almost died in the first and third round. And usually when I watch a fighter almost die in the octagon, I don't score it for that fighter. That's just the way my scoring works. When they get hit with a punch and then they're flat on their back, and I'm like, oh, here's the fight's going to be over. Then that fighter doesn't win the round on my scorecard 99% of the time, barring they do that to the other fighter. Last one I'll add, I wish Magomedov, Bruno Ferreira, please fight with some IQ next time, man. Please. We talk about dumb fighters all the time, but my God, he's out there. He's got Abu's hurt. He's almost got him knocked out, and he jumps to the Gilead, and you're like, oh God, here we go. So yeah, good fight, honestly, that one. But Bruno, please, you hit with hammers. Just throw some more shots and get the knockout. That's all you had to do. All right. Thank you to everyone for sticking around through UFC 308. We go 45 minutes on the main event, so it is a little bit of a longer episode, but that's, like I said earlier, it's what happens when Max Holloway and Ilia Topuria fight. It's going to go long. So thank you guys for sticking with us. And if you're a fan of Magomed Ankalaev, I apologize for our comments. Please stick around and watch future episodes. But like and subscribe. And if you're interested in UFC Edmonton content, that will be up on the website. We obviously didn't have time to talk about it today, but you can catch our UFC Edmonton thoughts on the website. We'll have preview and best bets up, so you can get our thoughts on that on the website, vendettasportsmedia.com. Until then, we will be back next week with another episode, recapping those Edmonton fights, maybe some news, previewing the next card. I don't even know what the card is after that, but we'll have an episode next week with the biggest MMA news as usual. But like I said, thank you for tuning in. We'll see you later.